Welcome back to the Mason's Arms. My name's Jo Tomlinson, and today I will be presenting the final session on pricing. In this session, we're going to talk about getting paid. Because let's face it, if somebody doesn't pay for the goods or services that you've provided, it's either a gift or it's theft. So let's make sure that we get paid, because unless we're a charity, then that's going to be key to us. So the first thing I want to talk about is quotes, estimates, proposals, whatever you want to call them. Lots of people have different terminology for it, but fundamentally it's the same thing. We need to start at the beginning of the process. So the best way to make sure that we get paid at the end is to make sure that we start in the right way. So if we're talking to people about a service that we're going to provide, then we need to be talking about it, including everything that's included and what isn't included. Imagine that we talk to somebody about a level of and quality of service that we really wanted to provide, something we were going to be really proud of. And they said to us, "Oh, is there anything that you can do for us on price?" And they downgraded to the next level of service. We need to be sure that when we send them that estimate or proposal, that we tell them everything that's included in it, because of course that's what we're going to want to do. But we also need to tell them what isn't included, what they downgraded from. And the reason we do this is to stop it from coming back and bothering us later down the line, because people forget, or they're a bit cheeky and they've asked you to give them a discount and you've said, "Oh, well, that's going to mean that you're not going to get this or you're not going to get that." But they still want it, really. You still talked about it. And if you don't document the fact that that is now not included in the proposal that you've given them, they may actually get confused because they heard you talk about it and think that it was included. So make sure that you document that really well. And for these quotes, estimates, proposals, we'd quite like a signature. Now we can get e-signatures because lots of these things are now apps and pieces of software. And I would recommend that if you are in fact giving quotes, estimates or proposals, that you do use a piece of software, an app that allows you to do that. And actually, lots of these apps will allow you to get a signature on your phone, a bit like when the postman comes to the door, or when he used to come to the door and get a signature, then you can get that on your phone. And that's great evidence, because we want evidence of the fact that somebody has accepted the terms that are in our quote. That might be our T's and C's, or it might be what's included and what's not, but it's definitely the price. So if we can get an e-signature or a signature on our phone if we're going out to see somebody, then that's fantastic. And it's fantastic evidence should we need to come back to it later. But you know the great thing about these things is if somebody signs for something, suddenly their memory gets a lot better, because they know that you've got evidence of what's included and what's not, and that you know that they've signed it. Suddenly they remember a lot better what is included and what isn't included in that proposal. The next step is to make sure that we raise our invoices promptly. People can get a little bit blasé about raising invoices, or a bit busy, and that raising of invoices thing isn't what they're focusing on. Because if you're in a business on your own and you're doing everything in your business, then you want to be either developing the business and selling your goods and services, or delivering those goods and services, or answering questions from your clients. And back office stuff, raising of invoices, can get a bit forgotten. And if we don't do it immediately and we do forget it, then it's unlikely that our customer's going to remind us, because they're actually quite pleased that now they've got your goods or services for free. So you need to raise your invoices promptly. Number one, because you might forget if you don't, so you need a system in place for that. But number two, the sooner you raise the invoice, the sooner it will get paid. You ain't going to get an invoice paid that you haven't raised. The second point on raising of invoices and raising them promptly is please don't post them. So we used to do that. We used to raise invoices and we would pop them in an envelope and off they would go, and a few days later they would arrive. If we email them, we know they've arrived on the same day as we've sent them. We don't have to wait, and we don't have to wait for somebody to come back to us and say, actually, I never got that invoice. Now, I know, as somebody who's been in finance all of my life, that when people are short of cash, one of the excuses that they will use for having not paid your invoice is that, well, we never got it. But if you've got evidence that they got it, then they can't use that. So if you put it in the post, they can say it got lost in the mail. Or they can say it's been delayed, over Christmas and whatnot, then the post can be slower. Make it immediate. Email it to them. Even better, send it through a piece of software. So if you've got a piece of bookkeeping software that allows you to raise invoices through it, some of these pieces of software will actually flag when somebody has read that email with your invoice in it. And it'll log that on the piece of software, which is great evidence. And I'm sorry to keep going back to evidence, but sometimes we just need it. When somebody says, oh yeah, I never got that, and it says in your software that it was opened last Tuesday at 4 o'clock, and you say to them, was somebody else on your computer last Tuesday at 4 o'clock? Well, they ain't ever going to use that excuse again, are they? Because now they know that you're onto them. So we want to button this down. We want to get our invoices raised and make sure that they're received. So whilst you're on the phone and you're checking that they've got their invoice, why not also ask them when it's going to get paid? Businesses often have a particular day in the month or a day in the week that they're going to be paying their invoices. So is it Fridays? Is it Mondays? Do they pay at the end of the month? When is this invoice actually going to get paid? So ask them. So when are you going to be paying this invoice? Once you've asked them that question, the great thing is, because they know that you've asked that question, they are much more likely to pay it on that day that they've told you. So that's really going to help you to get paid faster. If you're in the service sector and you've given somebody a quote or a proposal for something that you're going to do, then you may encounter something that I call scope creep. Might be just me. Sometimes people will forget that they haven't asked me to do that particular level of service or that particular service, and on the phone they come, can you just, or you're in their premises and they're saying, can you just, and you're nice and you want to please them and you want them to be happy and tell people that they're happy with the service that you've provided. So we end up doing it. And because we end up doing it and we haven't quoted them for it, then we end up doing it for free and it destroys our profit margin. The biggest destroyer of profit for service providers is that, can you just? While you're here, can you just do this for me? And they're on the phone and they need something extra from you. Now, you know that that wasn't included in their original proposal. And if you've given them that original proposal and they've signed it, you can refer them back to it. But that doesn't mean that you don't want to actually provide that additional service. And I'm going to call that additional service an extra works order. Yes, of course we can provide that. Can we just? Yes, we can. But that wasn't included in your original proposal. So now I'm going to raise an additional proposal, an extra works order for that additional work that you're looking to get. The next thing I want to talk about is not only getting paid, but getting paid earlier. So we also already mentioned about raising invoices as soon as you can, because that will mean that they get paid earlier. But there are a few other things that you can do as well. You could shorten your terms. If you're using 30-day standard terms or 30-day end of month or 7-day, whatever it might be, you can shorten those terms. They're your terms. You're allowed to shorten them, or at the very least have the discussion. If it's a long-term contract that you're in the middle of, you're probably not going to be able to shorten the terms. But for new ones you can. You can just go in with your standard terms as 7 days rather than 14, as 14 days rather than 30. That's then going to mean that you're going to get paid faster. And when the cash is in our bank account, we know that we've got it and it's pretty and it's our money and it's much better off there than anywhere else. So if you shorten the terms, you're much more likely to get paid faster. We can take deposits. Oh no, not me, I hear some of you saying. You can, or at the very least have the discussion. If somebody is in the market for your product or service, they should have the money to be able to pay for your product or service. So actually, it doesn't matter if they pay for part of that product or service now, does it? They're going to pay for it anyway. So wouldn't it be good if you could get part of that from somebody up front? Take a deposit. I mean, if you're in a hospitality sector and you've got people not turning up for tables in your restaurant, taking a deposit is a great way of making sure that people turn up, especially if it's non-refundable, because they are going to want that money used on something. So at the very least, they're going to move the table to a different day rather than just not turning up and you're never going to see that potential customer. Think about any kind of service that you offer. You can take a deposit, or even in some cases, the whole lot up front. This is known as Forma Payments, and some people take this all the time. And you can take it up front and it still be refundable based on certain terms. It might be that somebody's got a booking in your establishment and you want to take the money up front so that you know that that's in. But actually, if they cancel within 7 days, 14 days, whatever, they get that money back. So you can still take payments up front even if you've got a cancellation policy. So think about that, taking payments up front, taking pro forma payments. People shouldn't be booking with you. They shouldn't be asking for your products or services if they can't afford to pay. Imagine you got to the tills at Asda and said, oh, actually, can I pay you next week? It's not going to happen, is it? And yet people do this to us as small businesses all the time. And we need to stop that from happening wherever we can so that we get the cash into our bank accounts. The next thing I want to talk about is direct debit. So if you're doing something and people are booking with you on a regular basis, using your services on a regular basis, then you could actually sign them up to direct debit. And if you sign them up to direct debit, what happens is you raise an invoice on the 1st of the month and it collects from their bank account on 7th, something like that. And then that money comes into your bank account a few days later. Now, they're aware of the fact that they've signed up to the direct debit and they've been given enough days' notice under the direct debit legislation that if they don't agree with that invoice, they can still cancel it. But in most cases, that's going to mean that you get paid regularly, the regular amount that you agreed, rather than having to spend time chasing it. We don't build in time for chasing money when we quote for selling things. We just don't. So if we can avoid it, then wouldn't that be good? Stage payments is another version of taking deposits, but in some circumstances, in some marketplaces, you might have stage payments. So you agree an amount up front and then at certain stages of the development of whatever you're doing, then you take further payments based on certain criteria being met. And early payment discounts. Now, I know people don't like to give discounts, and I do discourage giving discounts, but early payment discounts are there for a reason. If you give an early payment discount and somebody's short of money, then they are likely to pay yours before somebody else's because they don't want to lose the early payment discount. You get to the top of the pile. Now, if you're loaning money in your business because your cash flow is not great, if you can get paid earlier, you might be able to come out of the loan agreement that you've got, come out of your overdraft, come out of whatever it is that's providing the finance in your business. So actually, an early payment discount might be costing your business less than whatever other way you're financing your business. So consider early payment discounts if that is the situation that you're in. So that is the final session on pricing. I hope you found the session interesting and useful.